The power that we are dealing with here is immeasurable. You're listening to Hot Wampa.
Alright, cheers Yarrick for bringing us in there. Okay, this is a Hot Wampa Rogue One special. I'm Dave, the producer and co-host of this podcast. Unfortunately, my partner in crime Mark isn't available tonight. But however, fans of Mark should not feel disappointed because he will still feature in this podcast aplenty. We've got a lot of different compiled audio clips which will comprise part of this podcast, and Mark is prominent in all of those, so don't worry, Mark will be coming into the conversation in a pre-recorded sense at least. We've had a little bit of feedback on our Facebook about Rogue One. Jez Cutter asked us when were we going to be doing the podcast based on this, that he was curious about our views. Here's your podcast, Jez. Like I said, it's taken a while to get this podcast together because there's a lot of different elements will be going into this podcast. Also from Stephen Martin, he sent us his quick thoughts on Rogue One. A bit slow for a start, but great at the end. Like the way you start seeing links to a New Hope film. I guess they would all die at the end. Missed the music and intro at the start. I guess like the opening crawl and what have you. I don't know. I missed it to start with, but I soon kind of got into the film. Shame they skipped this bit. Come out of cinema with head confused until you start putting it all together. Good watch. Also went to King's Lynn Cinema. Only £4 in 3D. I didn't even know it was there until midweek. Cheers boys, sorry a bit short this time. That's alright Stephen, we love feedback, it's hard to come by, we'll take anything we can get mate. So cheers to Stephen for that. Rogue One, a Star Wars story for us. Well, I mean the UK opening was the 15th, so as we did for The Force Awakens, me and Mark went to the midnight premiere at the Cambridge Arts Cinema. And we got a few audio clips on the way in. I think Mark had started to record audio earlier in the day in his anticipation of the build up to Rogue One. So let's hear what Mark had to say, shall we?
So it's just coming up to 7 o'clock. The moon is high up in the sky. It was quite an impressive moon. At least I think it was a moon, not a space station. Around 5 hours to go till we're at the cinema to watch the movie. I got my Hot Wampa t-shirt to iron, and I'm going to have a spot of dinner, and then I'll probably watch some Premier League football or something like that just to pass the time. I did have an hour sleep earlier. Hopefully that's enough for now, but I'll keep everyone updated, and looking forward to seeing what Dave thinks about this evening.
So there you go. Mark's anticipation and build up to Rogue One. So intense that at one stage he was confusing the moon with the Death Star. Anyway, 11 PM rolled around and I went to pick up Mark and his girlfriend, and off we went to Cambridge. We parked up in the college where Mark works, and we walked over to St Andrew Street where the Cambridge Arts Cinema is. On that journey between my car and the cinema, Mark recorded his second audio clip. Let's have a listen.
Okay, so it's after 11 o'clock, past 11, we're on our way across Parker's Piece to the cinema. I'm now with Dave, who drove us here. Dave, what are you expecting?
I'm expecting to, when we go home, to do it in a 5-point turn instead of the 20-point turn it took me to get parked up on the way in.
The good thing is we managed to make it in one piece.
Yeah. No, looking forward to it. Looking forward to finding out who's in the back to tank. It's on my bucket list. I guess I'll find out tonight. Seeing who's there, see if we've got any cosplayers, the general atmosphere. Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
And so we arrived at the Cambridge Arts Cinema in St Andrew Street in good time. We sat and waited in the lobby upstairs after purchasing our tickets to go into the movie. They even had a beer available which is themed on Rogue One. I believe the photographs should be on our social media, I'm not too sure. Anyway, whilst I went off to make use of the gentlemen's facilities in the Cambridge Arts Cinema, Mark ran into a Hot Wampa listener and friend of his from Ely called Mr. Ben Hatton. So Mark grabbed hold of Ben and sat down with him on the sofa and really recorded his words and his thoughts and his expectations for Rogue One. Shall we have a listen to Ben?
Okay, I'm at Cambridge Arts Picturehouse now. Just had a little seat, And here is Ben Hatton, one of our own from Ely. Ben, what are you expecting tonight?
To be honest, I'm not sure. Last year before Force Awakens, I read a lot into all the conspiracies and all the different things. So this year I've tried to keep away from it a little bit and go into it with a bit of an open mind to see what it's like.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. I've seen a few reviews, but I haven't actually read them. I've just seen like how many scores they've given, the points out of 10 and stuff. So yeah, let's hope for the best.
Well, there you go, and thank you to Ben for contributing to this episode of Hot Wampa. A bit like ourselves, really. I think he wanted to go in with an open mind and not too many expectations and just enjoy the film and see what happens. I mean, I know it was difficult to stay out of the bubble, but I tried to stay as spoiler-free as much as possible going in. So we went in, queued up, got into the 2D theatre. It wasn't much of a queue. There weren't many people in the 2D theatre, actually. It wasn't anywhere near as busy as it was last year for The Force Awakens. Well, I think we had hoped to see some cosplayers and the likes, but unfortunately there was only about, 20 to 30 people in the theatre we watched it in. I believe in the 3D theatre next door to the one we were in, quite a few more people came out at the end of the movie, so I guess 3D was just more popular on opening night, but there was certainly plenty of seats available. I was fine with that. You can sit there and watch it without listening to people's TB and lungs exploding and coughing their guts up and rustling of popcorn buckets and slurping of drinks and all the other rude behaviour that people get involved with when you're trying to watch a movie in a communal way. It was quite nice, so I'm not going to complain about it. We watched the movie, we came out, gone 2 a.m. in the morning, stepped out of the theatre onto St Andrew Street. The first thing I did was accidentally kick over somebody's bottle of beer which they'd left sitting in the middle of the footpath, smash glass and alcohol everywhere. Just kept walking. I don't know whose beer it was, we just kept going. And then on the foot transit between the cinema and where my car was parked up, we noticed 2 young gentlemen on bicycles somehow managed to collide and come off and make a sound similar to the tones of a dying horse or something. I mean, honestly, I don't know quite how you would describe this moaning. I guess if you're going to go out of Cambridge that time of night, you're going to run into all the weirdos and drunks and everything. Having said that, we survived. We got back to my car. I'd managed to sleep earlier in the evening prior to going out to see the film, a bit like Mark had, although I'd probably had a few more hours this time. Certainly did better than I did on The Force Awakens when I was running on 0 battery power. And I got myself and my passengers safely back to Ely. The following Sunday, we decided to do something a little bit special. Of course, we were always going to do this Rogue One special, but instead of just me and Mark talking about our experiences, we wanted to broaden the panel a little bit more. So we looked further afield and we put the call out to Hot Wampa listeners and people by further association with our podcast. The first person that answered that call was Mr. Chris Vint, a prolific video blogger from Northern Ireland. He has a very popular channel on YouTube called Vintomania, if you want to check him out. Focuses on conventions, comics, collectibles, all the things that Chris likes. He was the first one to come back to us and come on board. Next up, we managed to enlist Mr. Timothy McMahon, an excellent podcaster from Portland, Maine in the USA. Timothy is the producer and host of the less than 12 Parsecs Star Wars podcast, a podcast that really does fly along at light speed. Timothy doesn't waste time. It was great to have him on board. Next up, we managed to recruit 2 podcasters from Texas, the Lone Star State. That was Mr. Nelson Negron and Mr. Chris Marks, both of whom are hosts on the excellent podcast FN2187 Star Wars podcast. With myself and Mark, that made a panel of 6 for us to sit down and discuss Rogue One, all of us having recently viewed it. Some of us, Timothy, more than once. So, shall we have a listen to our roundtable discussion that we had? Okay, welcome aboard everybody. This is something we wanted to do. This is a post-Rogue One viewing discussion. But it's not just the dulcet tones of myself and my co-host Mr. Mark Dawes you will have to endure. No, we've rounded up an international panel of esteemed and credible fans to, have this debate and discussion with. I'm Dave. I'm co-host and producer of the Hot Wampa Science Fiction podcast. With me, as always, is my good friend and co-host, Mr. Mark Dawes. Say hello, Mark.
Hello there.
And joining us from Northern Ireland, Many of you might know him from YouTube under the title Vintomania. It's Mr. Chris Vint, a prolific video blogger, former podcaster, and all-round decent fella.
All right. I'm not paying you for anything that you said there. Let me just clarify that. So thank you for having me on. And it's been a while since I've done a podcast, so I'm looking forward to talking all things Star Wars.
Well, we got to keep you sweet, mate, to keep you on board.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Crossing the pond from Portland, Maine, also a fellow podcaster, Mr. Timothy McMahon. I hope I pronounced that right, Timothy.
Well, I've Americanized it. It's McMahon. We pronounce it McMahon over here. So
McMahon. Okay.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here, sir.
Thank you very much. You say potato, we say potato, or whatever. I don't know. We won't worry about that too much. Timothy hosts the excellent Less Than 12 Parsecs podcast, and I recommend any of our listeners check that out. It's a great little show.
It is little. Every episode is 5 minutes or less. The fastest Star Wars podcast in the galaxy.
And that's no exaggeration either. Also from across the pond, going down to the Lone Star State, joining us from podcast FN 2187, Mr. Nelson Negron and Mr. Chris Marks. Gentlemen, welcome aboard.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you for having us. We appreciate that.
It's our pleasure to host you. And like I said, we really wanted to do this, and we've got a great panel here, so I'm really looking forward to this. Really, I think we need to look at our initial impressions. We've all seen the movie. For me and Mark, it was midnight last Wednesday, wasn't it, mate? Yeah. We saw it in Cambridge. What was your feeling on going into the theatre when you sat there and the movie started? Did you were you excited? Did you miss that opening crawl?
Well, personally, I thought it was a step into the unknown. I mean, we'd read a few things before, haven't we? So we knew what wasn't going to feature in the film. And we were full of hope, I think, and thankfully, the film reached those expectations.
Yeah. I'm with Mark. I was very hopeful, but I was also apprehensive because it's such a new and different type of Star Wars movie. This is the first standalone, and I didn't know what to expect, but I loved what I saw.
I'd only watched the first 2 trailers and decided to keep away from that. I was very hopeful, and as we all know now, rebellions are built on hope. So I was kind of not knowing what to find going into it, and then you just see a galaxy far, far away. Oh, we are going to get the crawl, and then you just hear the noise, and you're like, okay, that kind of scared me. So I was kind of not knowing what to expect, and this is the first Star Wars film I've went into with not really, really high expectations, because at the end of the day, it's Star Wars.
Yes, when I saw it without the open crawl, I was a little taken aback. I thought it still... Actually, we just talked about this on the podcast, but I believe it should have been there to a degree. But overall, it didn't take away from my enjoyment of the movie.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I was... gosh... I'm still trying to put it all into words. I was hopeful. I was excited. I was really just didn't know what to expect. I just wanted to see a Star Wars movie. Was pretty much all it was for me. I was excited that I was actually getting to sit in the theater again, especially after TFA, and was just excited to see a movie about Star Wars and to know that, I'm going to, obviously we all knew what was going to happen and what the storyline was. But I still was excited to see how they were going to do it and what all they were going to put into it. And as far as the opening crawl, I did kind of miss the Star Wars feel there at the beginning. I know that they intentionally tried to separate this out from the saga, but I did miss it. But once we got into the movie, I was ready, and I felt good.
I mean, for me, the experience was similar. I went through a similar thing for the Force Awakens, because obviously with that transfer from Fox to Disney, I thought I would miss that traditional Fox fanfare, the searchlights and the drum roll and all the rest of it. I didn't miss it at all for The Force Awakens. I was okay with it. I was still comfortable with it. But I did wonder to myself, is the crawl a step too far? Will it take me too far away from what I familiarise with Star Wars? And I'll be honest, I was a little bit apprehensive, a little bit nervous in the way that it opened. You know what? After a little while, I just got lost in it and accepted it. The world looked and felt right to me. And I was quite happy to just accept what I was looking, and great, fantastic.
I'm curious to know if you guys... Yes, it sounds like we all missed the crawl, but do you think the film needed the crawl? For example, I read Catalyst, the prequel novels, so I knew the backstory. I knew I knew what we were going into. But for someone who didn't know that backstory, do you feel like the film caught you up to speed?
I think it was okay because as a standalone story, I think it really did start at the beginning of that story. We're all Star Wars fans, so it's easier for us to keep pace anyway. I mean, as you've mentioned, Catalyst and so on, and all the nods towards the EU, or as it's now called, Legends, that were in the film, I'm sure we all picked up on. I think it was fine without the crawl. And, the traditional films have that crawl. I don't know. I think you've got to respect the viewer's intelligence and just think that they'll get it. I was fine without it. I didn't know the plot to any greater degree other than the fact it was a heist for the Death Star plans. And that was all I really knew of the plot going in. And I was fine with following it and I just accepted it. And, I took the story as it unfolded. So I was okay with that.
Yeah, I think it depends on who you're talking about. If you're talking about Star Wars fans, or you're talking about just kind of your casual Star Wars watcher, it's kind of a conversation that I had with my wife because I read Catalyst and she didn't. She kind of she likes Star Wars, but she's not a huge fan like I am. She kind of goes along with it because of me, and so I kind of asked her thoughts on that, and she did say at first she was a little lost. Because she didn't have all the background with, why the Usos were where they were and why Krennic was coming to find them and all of that. But once she got into the movie, it was fine. And I really enjoyed knowing all of that backstory because of Callus. So I think an opening crawl would have helped those that are not hardcore Star Wars fans.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. One thing I said to Dave after viewing it was I really missed the traditional font on each of the planets. Just small things like that are really strange that you notice it when you see the caption on each planet. And I think Dave said that this one was a bit wider or narrower. Dave, was it?
Yeah, it's I did have the information on the font used for this. Unfortunately, I don't have that information at my fingertips at the moment, but it is a separate font to the standard Star Wars font that the titles would come up in. Yeah, you're quite right there.
Yeah, because just whenever Rogue One comes up, you're just like, it's yellow, and you kind of like, it kind of looks like it, but it's nowhere near as bold and as big, So I expected to see Rogue One, a Star Wars story below it, whereas it just said Rogue One. It's like, all right, that's fine. It's just a title. That's okay. And, it is what it is. Let's get on with the rest of the movie. I don't need to have like all the credits at the start or whatever, but as long as we have that and then we're going on and we're seeing where the characters go from there, that's fine. That's the whole point of the story. So I was fine with it. It's just like, I think with this movie, we'll find out you nitpick at very, very, very small, minor things. It's not a case of, oh my lord, the story was terrible and this was terrible. It's no Fantastic Four. Let's get that straight. It's fantastic, but it's not Fantastic Four. So let's just leave it at that.
That's funny.
I know one of the biggest concerns was that a lot of people who perhaps aren't hardcore fans to the degrees that we all are would confuse it with being the follow-up to The Force Awakens, in effect Episode 8, which obviously no, it's not, but we know it's a prequel story. But I know that was a valid concern for Disney and Lucasfilm as such going into this. I don't know if really many people out there in the mainstream have got confused, or
somebody that I went in the shop and I was buying a Star Wars Battlefront strategy guide, and they actually said, like, oh, did you watch the movie? And I said yes, and I kid you not, they said, like, I was very confused because I thought Darth Vader was dead, and I was like, oh, you're one of those ones then, okay. I felt like patting her in the head, going like, it's okay. If you watch the first one, episode 4, you'll understand. Like, okay.
A quick off-the-cuff question to everybody. Was it who you expected it to be in the Bacta tube?
Yes, although I expected him to come out and say to Krennic, like, why are you here? You're disturbing my bath. But my dad, my dad thought it was the Emperor. He said, oh, I thought it was the Emperor. And I was like, no, it was Darth Vader.
A lot of people thought it was the Emperor.
Like, oh, right. So I think it's because of the guards at the side. That's kind of what threw people off.
Yeah. How about you, Nelson? Was it who you thought it would be?
I really didn't put much thought into who I thought it was going to be. I was a little bit surprised that it was Darth Vader, just because I took it as the guy who was kneeling in front was of more importance. And so to it be Darth Vader, not that Darth Vader is not important, but I figured it would be someone of Darth Vader's stature who would be kneeling to someone even more important, because like it was said that the guards that were standing by. So I was a little thrown off whenever I saw that it really wasn't anyone of any magnitude that was really kneeling in front of the tube.
How about you, Timothy? Was it who you expected it to be?
No, I thought it was going to be Snoke. No, just I too was thrown off by the Royal Guards. I didn't expect it to be Vader, but it worked for me. It reminded me of the scene in Empire where without his helmet, but this is our more extreme 21st century take on that scene where everything has to be more horrible. So I liked it, but it was not who I expected. I don't think I really had an expectation, honestly.
I don't think the scene was too graphic. I mean, you really didn't get to see any detail, did you? Just the back to fluid sort of basically draining out, and you didn't really get to see too much barbecued Vader there, did you?
No.
So I mean, I thought it was quite a comfortable scene, but yeah, I mean, the internet was rife prior to going into this that who would this be? Would this be Snoke? I mean, there's some ridiculous theories out there. Mace Windu was battered about at one stage.
No doubt Jar Jar Binks was probably battered about it there too.
Knees are back. You don't know what to expect from the internet, do you?
It seems like it's always those three that are the rumors. It's either Jar Jar, Mace, and now Snoke.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I didn't really. I'm with Timothy. Didn't really put a lot of expectations on who was in there, and didn't. I mean, I assumed it could be Vader, but I wasn't totally sure going into it. So, but I liked it. I liked the scene a lot. Yeah. Really impressed.
We had a tip-off beforehand. Mark knows somebody who was loosely involved with that scene, and we knew that Vader was in that scene. We weren't sure whether we were seeing Vader from behind kneeling down, though, or whether he was actually in the tube. But we did know in advance that Vader was in that scene, didn't we, Mark?
Yeah, and there was a lot of speculation about the costume, about the cloak, because he didn't have the chain across. So we weren't sure if that was actually Vader kneeling or, if someone else was in the tank. So
okay, let's have a look at film rankings. Now, if we take all of the Star Wars movies, and I'm not including the two 1980s spin-off Ewok movies or the animated Clone Wars movie.
The Christmas special, yeah.
Not the holiday special. No, let's leave something.
There's no point doing this now. There's no point ranking them now. If
the argument's destroyed. Now let's just leave them in the closet where they belong, gentlemen, please. So of the 8 films, Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, and New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Force Awakens, and now Rogue One, how would you rank your movies in descending order? So with 8 being your least favourite and 1 being your favourite. I've drawn up my list of film rankings here in front of me. At number 8, I'm coming in with Attack of the Clones. At number 7, I'm coming in with Phantom Menace. Number 6 for me is Return of the Jedi, controversial possibly. Number 5 for me is Revenge of the Sith. Number 4 is Force Awakens. Number 3, A New Hope. And I've put Rogue One up at number 2 with Empire coming in at number 1. I don't know if you guys had time to consider a similar ranking system for yourselves.
You kind of put us all on the spot right about now. Right. And everyone's getting pen and paper, writing it down. What way did I put it?
I've only just done my Christmas list.
Trying to figure out. I could go with a gut feeling then, gentlemen. If somebody asked you that off the cuff and you had to give the film a ranking, where would you place it in that order of 8?
I'll say third. I would say third. I'd say that would be third. A New Hope and then Empire, probably. I mean, when we go lower down the list, especially the prequels, I think they're a bit similar in the standards. So
okay,
I would say fourth. I would say Jedi, Revenge of the Sith, The Force Awakens, and then Rogue One. I'll stick with that. And then Empire after that, and then A New Hope, and then Phantom Menace, and then Attack of the Clones, rock bottom.
Yeah, I think Attack of the Clones probably isn't going to rank too high for most people.
I think the Ewok movie still probably rank higher than Attack of the Clones, if I'm honest.
What about Timothy? Where would you place it?
Well, I'm the sort of guy who always loves a movie when he first sees it, and then it takes multiple viewings for it to fall down the list for me. So right now, it's very high on the list. I would say number 1 for me is Empire, number 2 is A New Hope, and then a 3-way tie between this, Jedi, and The Force Awakens for number 3. So
could that almost work in reverse for you, though, Timothy? Could multiple viewings actually put it back up the list?
well, I think of the example of the Phantom Menace. I walked out loving that movie. I walked out the first 5 times loving
See,
that
thank
movie.
goodness I'm not the only person who watched it 5 times in the cinema. Thank goodness.
Oh, I saw it 10. I saw it
At least
10 in the
10,
cinema. I bought 10 tickets before the movie came out, and
wow.
I ended up regretting that. But it was around the 7th viewing. I was like, oh, this film has some problems. But it took me a while to get there.
What about Chris M?
Yeah, I've been going back and forth because we discussed this as well. And I like the 3-way tie idea because that lets me off the hook a little.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty much in the same. I'm thinking Empire. Empire's still my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
And then New Hope, and then it kind of gets a little harder after that. I think Rogue One is going to be pretty close with the third, with Force Awakens.
And Nelson.
Okay, so I did just grab a pen and a piece of paper and jot out my thoughts.
Furiously scribbling away.
I was. If I can read my own shorthand here, but Return of the Jedi. Typically, when I was asked this question, as far as what my favorite was Return of the Jedi, just because I got to see Luke Skywalker kind of at the peak of his Jedi form. Obviously, so it's going to change that, but I always had Jedi at the top of my list. But with Rogue One, it gives me a new appreciation for New Hope. So I kind of have to bump at this point. Now, obviously, that could change, but I think at this point, I put A New Hope and then Rogue One right behind it. Then we throw in Jedi, Empire, and I know Empire being that low on the list for some people are thinking, "Are you crazy?" But yes. So Empire would be 4. Force Awakens would be 5. Phantom Menace actually comes in at 6 for me. Then Revenge, and then Attack of the Clones. And I think the reason why I put Phantom Menace above the other 2 is the Darth Maul Qui-Gon one scene for me just blows me away. I just kind of look at that as a pure display of skill, and the choreography in that to me is just amazing. So I do have Phantom Menace up a little bit higher than probably most people do.
I think you're right. I think that whole lightsaber fight and even the music to it, the Duel of the Fates, and like you say, the choreography, without a doubt, it is the best lightsaber battle. What about favourite vehicles? Now, we've seen a lot of things in Rogue One that we're all already familiar with. X-Wing fighters, Y-Wing fighters, TIE fighters, so on. Even the clone turbo tank was in there as a bit of an Easter egg, and I'm sure you gentlemen spotted that.
Yeah.
What was your favourite vehicle that you hadn't seen before Rogue One? For me personally, it was the TIE Striker. Now, there's been a lot of people online are complaining that it's had a lack of screen time. I personally think its screen time was comparable with the TIE Interceptor in Return of the Jedi. I also like the brief appearance of its Troop Lander variant that we saw used on Scarif, and that was on screen extremely briefly. So what would you gentlemen would say is your favourite new Star Wars universe vehicle that you've seen in Rogue One? If Timothy wants to go first on that one, perhaps?
Sure. I don't know if this counts because it's been in Rebels, but I really liked the Hammerhead Corvette. Maybe because of the way it was used, and that was something we've never seen in Star Wars before. But that, and then I've always loved the Corellian Corvette, and this being like related to that sort of ship, that type of ship. I love those smaller fighters. So yeah, that was my favorite new ship. If you give me the pass, because the fact that it has been in Rebels.
Wasn't the Hammerhead cruiser from Knights of the Old Republic?
Yes, yeah. Actually, I think there was a variant of it, like a much older version that's slightly different. But
right, yeah. Okay. How about you, Nelson?
I'm probably gonna go with the obvious one here and go with the U-wing. I just thought it was a very interesting, I guess, just new take on a ship that they used. It fit really well in the whole idea of the X-wing and all the other Rebel ships. I thought it fit pretty well in there.
Yeah, I mean, they've classed it as the U-wing fighter, but I think it's kind of more like a utility vehicle, a bit like a Huey helicopter or an amphibious landing craft or something of that vein. It sort of fits into that sort of utilitarian role. How about you, Chris Vint? What's your favourite piece of kit that we've seen in this?
I would probably say that like the tank thing, I don't know the name of it, that obviously we saw in the trailers and stuff. I liked that. The TIE Striker was great looking, but I just didn't like the fact that, like you were saying, it didn't get enough screen time. Very much like the Shore Troopers. They were my favorite troopers, and then it was like, oh, they're used very, very sparingly in this. But yeah, I just love that tank, and obviously whenever all the stuff goes down and the guy throws a grenade and then it just blows up, it's like, well, that lasted long. So yeah, you never get attached to vehicles because it's a case of either there's going to be a cool one, I like that, oh, there it goes, So I was a bit surprised at the acts and how easy they were destroyed. That I thought that was so. I wasn't expecting that, but it just goes to show that X-Wings are a bit more powerful than snowspeeders.
That's what I thought. I thought the armour was too strong for blasters, but obviously the old tame and back laser cannons on an X-Wing fighter can do the job. How about you, Chris, then? What was your favourite vehicle?
I think Nelson took my answer, but...
okay.
I really liked Krennic's shuttle. I think it was an interesting take on the Empire shuttles.
Yeah, I think it feels like it fits in the Star Wars universe, but it still had that sort of cool, dark, angular, almost like a stealth shape to it, didn't it?
Yeah,
it's a very an interesting vehicle. I'll certainly say that. What about you, Mark? What's your favourite piece of kit?
Well, going further down the line, obviously a couple of my answers have been taken already, but yeah, I've got Krennic's shuttle up here. I've got a picture of it, and I love the way the wings folded up, and similar to when Kylo Ren arrived in The Force Awakens, it was a cool vehicle. And, I mean, the character was great, and I thought this suited him perfectly.
Oh, Krennic, yeah, he was a fantastic character. I never realised that he was Australian, so he's mastered his accent there very well. I don't understand this habit they have, though, of parking Imperial shuttles about 300 or 400 yards away from where they actually be all the time. If you went with these guys to the supermarket, you'd be pushing your trolley a long way, wouldn't you? I mean, it's a bit crazy. But it does
want to get it scratched.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I mean, we've had some great and interesting vehicles in here. I mean, obviously there's been the nods in the vehicles to the further expanded universe, or Legends as it's called now, or other canonized pieces of Star Wars. I mean, I'm sure everyone spotted the Ghost in there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even though it's only for a few frames, what a great fanboy moment. I mean, I think that's just so wonderful that they've sort of paid that respect to us as proper Star Wars fans. And it still works well for the mainstream too. The mainstream might not realise and see these things that are in this movie, but for us, I think it's great that they've put those little nods in there.
There were a lot more nods to Rebels than I was expecting, actually. I was surprised at how many there were.
Yeah, I've got a bit of a list here of Easter eggs I managed to pull off the internet this morning. It's from some guy called Houndstooth Blog. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it.
Nope.
What have we got here? Yeah, Hera's name gets mentioned, Hera Syndulla.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've caught that. Yep.
Yeah,
General.
General, that's right. She's received a promotion. I believe that it was the same voice actress as well, Vanessa Marshall.
Yep, she's in the credits.
Yep. Chopper.
Yep.
Seen on Yavin 4, the astromech from Rebels. What else have we got? The Ghost, of course, yeah.
Pow, one of the new characters, supposedly uses the great Star Warsian curse word of Karabast, but I haven't caught that. Yeah.
No, I didn't catch that.
I didn't catch that one either.
That was something I read.
I think I might have heard it when they were at that battle on the beach, but it was really quick if that's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Star Wars expletive. So, yeah. What about favourite characters? I mean, for me personally, it was Shira Imwe. I thought he was a wonderful character. I'd like to have seen a lot more of him. The notes I've made on Shira myself is that, he's played by Donnie Yen, that he was an interesting and very endearing character. I thought his relationship with his friend Baze Malbus provided many humorous moments which offset well against his more serious spiritual side. What did you guys think was your favourite character?
I'll agree with you that Chirrut and his friendship with Baze is two great characters I want to see more of. I would love to see their backstory, how they work or relate to the Jedi, their members. What were they called? The Wills?
The Guardians of the Wills.
Guardians of the Wills, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to know that story. But the character that really blew me away was Cassian Andor. At the beginning where he shoots the man in the back, I'm like, okay, this is a brand new Star Wars, because this is not black and white. He's gone into the gray area. So he was the new character that really intrigued me the most first.
I felt with that scene that was deliberate, so that later on, when he's got Galen Erso in his sniper rifle sights, you genuinely believed that he could pull the trigger.
And I did. I thought he was going to. I'll admit that.
I like Cassian Andor. I like you say. I think towards the end he became more of a sort of standard, friendly Star Wars character. But that dark moment right at the beginning, you thought, well, yeah, actually, this guy could take someone out and wouldn't think twice or have a conscience about doing so. So, yeah, he was an interesting character. But I think as much as anything, that scene was to give him that credibility later on, that you think, yeah, he could pull the trigger in this moment, and that you actually see him make that conscious choice not to do so. But, yeah, he was a great character. What about you, Chris Vint? What was your favourite character?
Oh, well, like, Chirrut was great. I did love how and the way that Tarkin was done. That, for me, was the standout character. That was just phenomenal. I thought, right, okay, we're just going to see the reflection in the glass.
I thought exactly the same.
And then he turned around and you're just like, oh my, that's like Peter Cushing has just, got younger, and we would all wish to look like that. And, but just whenever you heard, him go, you may fire when ready, and you're just like, oh my lord, I've got chills. But it was just great to see that, and the fact is, you got more depth, and obviously he wasn't Grand Moff Tarkin, and he was still in touch with the Emperor, and you're thinking, right, this is the guy that in the next film is the guy that Vader answers to, so I want to see what he does. But yeah, and obviously the K2SO was just phenomenal. I thought if Sheldon from Big Bang Theory was a robot, that would be Sheldon. I just thought that would be it. But I just thought he was fantastic. You wanted me to stay in the ship, but it was boring. And you're just like, he's just saying whatever he wants. That's class. But yeah, for me, Grand Moff Tarkin, General Tarkin was brilliant. I couldn't really fault a lot of them. I was a bit concerned about Felicity Jones going into it, but we'll probably talk on that later on. But she was a good lead character, but I'm just interested to see if she is anyone's favorite character. That's what I'm interested to see.
Yeah, I mean, what you said about K2SO there, I mean, the droid had no social graces, did it? It had no manners, it had no time for anyone. But that was such a great character. I mean, obviously portrayed by Alan Tudyk in this instance, which I think a lot of science fiction fans are familiar from his work on Firefly and Serenity, and quite a broad catalogue of work, actually. I know, Mark, you had said with the rendering of Tarkin that they'd had some problems initially rendering his legs or something.
Yeah, that's right. The stance, putting the head on the body didn't come together too easily. And I mean, it's interesting because at the beginning I wasn't too convinced, but I guess when we saw him again later in the film, I thought, actually, I've got no problem with it. So maybe it was just the initial shock of actually seeing him. So.
Yeah, I thought they were going to chicken out. I thought they were going to do the shot simply, a bit like Chris has just said there, with the reflection of Tarkin in the windscreen or the window as such. But they didn't, though. They gave us the full shot, which was great to see.
Yeah, and great vocal work by Guy Henry. He did a really good impression, I thought.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Nelson? Favourite character?
I'm going to have to go with Krennic. But I think my feelings on him really come from Catalyst, and how he was mainly, he wasn't the most, he wasn't the smartest person or the most skilled person, but he was able to get to where he was when we saw him in Rogue One, just on the sheer fact that he could take advantage of a situation. Mm-hmm. And he could really get people in situations and manipulate people to get them to do what he wanted them to do. And so kind of carrying that over into Rogue One and seeing, that it's all starting to fall apart for him. I really felt bad for him that he was losing everything that he had accomplished. So I really enjoyed Krennic and really enjoyed just learning a little bit of backstory before the movie and kind of seeing that play through in Rogue One.
Yeah, I think problem for the character of Krennic was obviously he was opposed to Tarkin as such, and the ultimate political player as such, and Grand Moff Wilf Tarkin. Krennic seemed to be more of a practical guy. I mean, a director of Imperial Intelligence, not so much a political mover and shaker, whereas Tarkin knows how to play that game. And I was a bit like you. I thought perhaps, he should have done a little bit better out of it. I mean, I don't know if we should be cheering on a bad guy, but I feel a bit the same way, really. Chris M., your favourite character?
Well, it's definitely got to be the space monkey.
All right.
No, y'all already got over my favorites, but I really did enjoy Chariot and Baze and their relationship. And like you said, I'd like to learn a little bit more, maybe in a book or possibly a movie in the future that would have a background. But I really liked how focused he was on the Force and how hard he was trying to be, one with the Force, and how it helped him along through the movie.
Yeah, but for Chirrut, obviously, it was a question, well, literally, if you excuse the pun, blind faith, because he wasn't Force sensitive. He
Right.
just had to believe with it and go with it. And to a degree, I think that, perhaps he played his luck a bit. Perhaps he relied on Baze to get him out of trouble a time or two. But yeah, he was a wonderful character. I have to agree.
You have to say that the I think the funniest scene out of the entire movie had to be when they put the bag over his head.
Yeah, I'm blind. Are you kidding me?
Did you think the movie held a lot of real-world political relevance in that regard? I mean, early on in the movie, we saw Bodhi Rook, as portrayed by Riz Ahmed, captured by Saw Gerrera's more sort of militant rebel movement and put through the process of shackled and the hood over the head to obscure his vision. Do you think that felt a little bit real worldly? Because I know the actor Riz Ahmed had made associations between the story of Rogue One and the real world political situation today.
I know that there had been some, I guess, talk by, I apologize, I can't think of who it is off the top of my head, but, some references to Donald Trump and things like that. But I really did not notice anything that really jumped out at me. I mean, if they did anything, at least in my view, it was very subtle.
Mm-hmm. I actually liked it. I thought the fact that it didn't handle possibly sensitive things with kid gloves. It treated us like intelligent adults. I actually quite liked the fact that they were prepared to throw in these things that people could make those associations with. But yeah. Personal thoughts then, gentlemen. Is there anything specifically about Rogue One that any one of you wants to talk about? Go for it.
I would say about the trailers that the amount of stuff from the trailers that weren't in the movie, whenever
fights from the gantry.
Jyn running along the beach with the Death Star pans in her hand wasn't in the movie because obviously they did it on the top. So I'm wondering if some of the stuff, obviously we didn't have this is a rebellion, isn't it? I rebel. I was like, oh, thank God that wasn't in the movie. And that awkward scene with her and him sitting in and go like, yeah, and they're talking to each other, and it just seems so awkward. But there was a lot. If you look back at some of the trailers, like that wasn't in it. But very much like with Force Awakens, there were certain parts like Kylo Ren igniting his lightsaber, and you don't see that. The handoff of the lightsaber, you don't see that. So whether this is going to be one of these films now, the likes of Suicide Squad, and I'm not putting Star Wars and Suicide Squad and Batman vs Superman in the same breath, but it's a case of whether we get like a director's cut, that kind of thing, a version of that coming out. But there's just certain aspects of it that you're just like, right, I was expecting to see this. We didn't see Vader in front of the red screen or whatever.
I agree with you,
but
Chris.
there was only just, there was just certain parts that you were just like, right, okay, I expected to see that. So I expected, maybe whenever Krennic was going to see Vader, that he would be standing there looking at the plans, and then you see him walking out, and at that stage, everything, all the hairs just went whoop and just stood up, and it was like, oh, there's that music, there he is. But there was just certain parts like that I was just like, I expected to see that. I expected that here comes the TIE fighter. It's like, oh, right, okay. But it's just one of those things that maybe, as I said, the reshoots may have, but that TIE fighter scene would have just made that moment even more better. But it is what it is.
I think it's a bit disappointing because we all saw those trailers in advance, and we all saw the scene where Felicity Jones walks down I don't know what you want to call it, the catwalk or the gantry, and
just walking down the catwalk, walking down the end, and here we see Felicity Jones sporting the new Imperial.
And we see the TIE fighter rise up in front of her, and we all sat there and said, wow, because it is just such a cool, good-looking scene. It's a great shot, isn't it? Brilliantly rendered. And when I think sometimes you don't get that in the final product, you are perhaps a little bit disappointed.
One of the things I've read about the reshoots is changes were made to her character, that originally she came off as more arrogant, more cocky, as we saw in the trailers, the whole I rebel thing. And I'm probably in the minority here, but I sort of would have liked to have seen her to be a little more cocky, a little arrogant. She felt kind of just generic in this movie to me. Like there was
Eric? Was he Jin Eric?
There we go.
Oh.
Yeah, I can't really describe her character. She's just there and pulled along by events. Yeah, so any thoughts on that, gentlemen?
Do you think that Lucasfilm, Disney have a specific type of female lead that they're looking for here? If we associate with Felicity Jones, very similar physically to Daisy Ridley, similar stature, you know, even similar hair colours, they're both English actresses. Do they have a type here that they're specifically looking for?
Well, I wonder if those two things kind of go together. What Tim was asking about, you know, Jen's character being kind of generic, and the type of casting that Disney may be trying to, you know, without trying to overwhelm us or force onto us the character of, I guess, quote unquote, a female lead, if you will. And be able to pair it with another character, like you saw it in The Force Awakens, with Finn being her, you know, being this, I guess, the co-lead, and same thing here with Cassian being the co-lead. Maybe the reshoot was to maybe dial her down a little bit, so it didn't really, I don't know, maybe push that female lead onto us all at one time, because, you know, with the original trilogy, you had Luke Skywalker was the focus. Yeah, you had strong female characters, or a female character in Princess Leia, but she wasn't the character. So maybe that those two things go together.
I think the similarities between Jin and Rey, I'm gonna just say it's coincidental at this point for casting. We'll see how things evolve with the next standalone and the next episode films. But for right now, I don't think they're saying, hey, this is our type for a female lead. I think it's just more coincidence. But that's just my gut feeling. I have nothing to back that up with.
Okay. I mean, I have to agree that, you know, we didn't need Jin to be overplayed, a bit like Chris Vint has said, you know, with the speeches and the rebellions built on hope and stuff. I don't think we really needed that as such. I think to keep her as, I mean, she's basically been raised by Saw Gerrera, almost a semi-orphan, and when she was old enough to hold a rifle, she was holding a rifle kind of thing. So I don't think we needed that sort of more political type emotional character. I just think she needed to be a more gritty type of character, you know, a more earthly type of character. I think Rey was a better character in that regard in The Force Awakens. You got the feeling with Rey, she'd spent all of her life in a pretty rough neighborhood and had to look after herself, although she was a little bit naive to the ways of the galaxy. But yeah, I mean, I think it was okay.
I agree with you, Dave. I think Jyn Erso, but, you know, despite being related to, you know, the father who designed the Death Star, she didn't really have a lot to do. And by removing those speeches that we've seen in the trailer, maybe it was, you know, she became a plot device, really.
I think it's one of those things, like with the likes of the comics now. Obviously, we've got like Poe Dameron comics, Han Solo ones. I think, and obviously we're getting a Darth Maul one next year. It could be down the line that we maybe get a Jyn Erso one where it's to do with her and Saw Gerrera and, you know, their time together or something like that, and that might embellish her character a bit more. I'm not saying that her character was terrible, but I'm just wondering, like, when we're talking about her favorite characters, that how many people would say, like, oh, for me, she was a standout. But, you know, like, you read reports that apparently she was paid, like, she negotiated a 7-figure deal for her to play this character. And so, like, was she worth it? You know, like, obviously a lot of the other characters really stand out, as we've talked about. But for me, she's one of those characters that she's there. That's great, but I'm just hoping that there is some other ways to embellish the character, and so we can actually learn more about her and then appreciate the character more. Because, you know, with the likes of Leia, fair enough, maybe people go like, my favorite characters, Han Solo, Chewbacca, Lando, or whatever, and not a lot of people say Leia, and that might be the same thing with this. And then as time progresses, it'd be like her character starts to grow on you. Unfortunately, we only have one film to see her in at time of recording. Because she'll not come back from the dead, you know. So
that was another thing, Chris. The death scene, you know, when they're on the beach together, I just kept thinking about Deep Impact, which is
No,
an
I
awful
kept thinking.
film.
I kept thinking David Hasselhoff was going to run around and just tell him to get off the beach.
Oh dear. I think Felicity Jones' performance was adequate, and I think Chris has probably hit the nail on the head with this to a degree. Is that, yeah, the character was as strong as she needed to be, but there was such a strong cast of characters in this film that she didn't really kind of shine out from that as such, did she? You know, we didn't get the sort of Jyn Erso moment of pulling a lightsaber towards her with the Force like we did with Daisy Ridley in The Force Awakens or anything like that. It didn't really give us those moments. She came across to me as very much a sort of adequate character, and against such a strong cast, she was always going to struggle to rise above that cast. But I think she's fine for it.
It is a fantastic cast, and you only have to look at their CVs, and you've got some brilliant actors in there. And I think it's probably up there with the best. Like, it might even be number one in terms of reward and richness of actors that we've got in this.
Yeah, it's very interesting and dynamic cast, and I think there's a lot of careers that will do very well out of this film.
I think that was one of the strengths of the movies, of this movie, is, in a lot of ensemble films, a lot of the smaller characters, they just become their role. Like, oh, that guy's the driver, that guy's the pilot, that's the guy who's good with computers. But no, in this film, it felt like, of the big ensemble, I got a taste of who these characters were. And sometimes you don't see that in big ensemble films. To go back to Suicide Squad, like, a lot of those guys were just there. I didn't know who the characters were, and so there you go.
And also with Suicide Squad, the villain was pretty poor. At least in this one, you got a major villain that we all love. So
yeah.
What was everyone's reaction to that great fan moment when Vader comes aboard the Tantive 4 or the Rebel command ship to physically pursue those plans?
Are we allowed to swear?
Wow.
You can swear so long as I can bleep it out later on.
Yeah.
I know that Chris and Nelson do a pretty family-friendly podcast, in all fairness, so long as you give us that pause so we can bleep it.
Yeah, right. Do we need to be like a 5-second brief rant?
I'm not going to try and stop an Irishman from swearing. Go for it. Go on.
Oh, I'm not going to swear. I was just joking. But that was just whenever you heard that the breathing and then the lightsaber, and I've been listening to that tune, Hope, from the soundtrack. That has just been on repeat, and every time I listen up, my hair just go. I may have something wrong with me because my hairs keep standing on end listening to Star Wars stuff. But that was just, I mean, you could have just made that a movie and people would have been happy. It's like I don't know if everyone's played Star Wars Battlefront, but while you're waiting for it to load up, you can play as the Emperor or Darth Vader, and you're just going around killing rebels, and it's just like, oh, this is what this is like. And then it's a case of your man's going like, help us, help us, help us. And then I went to take this and be like, because we ain't getting out of here from him. No way. But that was just, I mean, it's one of those things that you watch and then you kind of think you're bouncing up and down your seat going, oh my God, like this is why. Because I thought, we're going to see Vader in this and he's going to kick ass. And I expected it to happen on the beach, like whenever the AT-ACs were destroyed, I'd be like, I'll do this myself and go down and slaughter things. But for the time that was given to it, it did what it did. But fair enough, it left us all salivating for more, I think it's safe to say.
I think it wasn't a mystery, that scene. We could see what was coming from the moment we heard the breathing and then the lightsaber ignition and those worried looking rebel troopers or old Iranian troopers or whatever they were in the corridor in the darkness in that red palette. Mm-hmm. And we knew he was coming for those plans, and he was just remorseless and had no mercy cutting through those guys, did he? And that final scene of the lightsaber through as that guy's just getting the plans onto that next tier. Fantastic. Such a brilliant scene, isn't it?
It's the most animated we've seen Vader in any of the films, isn't it? It's the moment that we've wanted to see for many years. So.
In that sort of post-armor guys, that post-Revenge of the Sith type Vader, yes, it is.
I found him most terrifying in this movie out of all the other ones, at least in that scene alone.
So I also like Vader's Castle, which was a concept that's come in from the old EU and Legends as well, isn't it? I believe in the old EU or Legends, wasn't it on a planet called Vajune?
See, I thought he would just set up camp in Mustafar.
Yeah, it was Mustafar.
And I was just like,
they changed it.
Just like, what? I've been burned, so I like the heat, so I'll just stay here.
Yeah. There's something kind of poetic. It's like he's staying in the place where Darth Vader was truly born.
Right.
So, yeah, but no, I love that little nod there, that he'd have his own pad out there. Nobody's going to disturb him there, are they?
There was an interesting scene earlier when Bodhi Rook was captured, and Saw Gerrera puts on his oxygen mask to breathe. And then, like, Bodhi Rook sort of looks up when he hears the sound of the breathing, you know, and you wonder if he's ever come across Starfade or, you know, heard him.
Like it's that oh no moment.
Yeah.
Please don't let it be him. Like I've been stitched up here or something.
So in this film, every time we saw a new planet, they would put the names of the planet on the screen, sort of like Guardians of the Galaxy. But they did do it for Mustafar. Why? I haven't been able to figure that out yet for myself.
That's a very good point. I couldn't figure that out.
Yeah.
You know, I've not seen that anywhere on the internet or anything until you mentioned that.
Yeah, I just wonder, is it one of those secret planets that's been removed from the archives so that we're not allowed to know its name? Like
Camino.
Yeah, Camino. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly. No, that's what I meant. In all seriousness, maybe it's, you know, it's
a political inconvenience, so that's right, it doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know, interesting. Yeah. Any other points, gentlemen?
I think probably the one thing that I missed the most, and I don't know where it could have fit in, but was Saul's speech from the trailer, and talking about you know, what will you become. And I really wanted to hear that in some at some point. I thought that would have really have made the emotion of becoming a rebel even that much more impactful.
I think that had some to do with the change of Jin's character.
Yeah, agree.
I don't know, that seemed a bit rich to me coming from Saw Gerrera. Because his own little personal branch of the rebellion that he's running down there on Jeddah seems far more hardcore, far more militant, and far more violent than the mainstream rebellion, which seems a lot more reserved. So for him to turn around and morally judge somebody and say, well, what will you become, etc., if you cross these lines, well, it seems to me he kind of crosses those lines every day in his pursuit against the Empire.
I've always read that scene as learn from my mistakes, don't follow the path I took.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, good point. But yeah, I mean, was Saw Gerrera underused for an actor the size of and the stature of Forrest Whitaker? I don't know.
Oscar winner. You know?
Oscar winning Forrest Whitaker, very right. Yeah.
I think you could have had like some of the stuff, like the thing with Bodhi and that Bungali or whatever he calls it, the slug thing that, you know,
the tentacle thing.
Yeah, you didn't really need to have that, but I think he was underused, you know, like for the amount of lines that he had in it, you're thinking, right, okay. Did you really need him to be in it? You know, I know it's a nice throwback to the Clone Wars and stuff, but could you not have had a different character there? Or the likes of, say, Bodhi was the one who found the message that, you know, Jin's dad sends and then gets and tries to find her that way. But it's a case of some of the characters, you know, because obviously we have quite a few of the characters that like the ones who actually go to the plans and whatever, and then we have like characters like him, just little small characters. But it'd be better to have maybe one of the other characters more embellished. I keep using that word, you know, but if we were to have like more screen time given to another character who didn't feature as much, you know.
Yeah, I guess my opinion on that is that that's where you're rewarded, I guess, in a sense, for reading Catalyst, because you get that backstory as how and why Saw is close to the family. And you kind of get a little bit of that at the beginning of the movie, and when he finds Jin in her hiding place. But in Catalyst, you really get that backstory of how they were introduced and you know how important he was to them into their film.
Oh, okay.
I'm only going to have maybe another 10 minutes or so. Sorry to have to.
No, it's fine. It's fine, guys.
Okay, Nelson. Well, I'll tell you what. Give yourself a plug. If people want to find you, where can they get hold of you?
Oh gosh. Well, Nelson and Chris, we are at podcast FN2187 on Twitter. Pretty much that's the reigning theme throughout all of our contact information. So we can be emailed at podcastfn2187@gmail.com. Searched on Facebook at podcast FN2187. And that's everything, isn't it?
Yes.
Brilliant. We can put those links in the podcast metadata as well, so listeners can find you via that.
I've just subscribed there now, so we have a new subscriber.
Yep.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, well, we appreciate. Chris, are you sticking around? Or?
No, I'm gonna cut out too.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, we appreciate the invite and the discussion. It was a lot of fun. We gotta do it again.
Yeah,
Gentlemen,
cheers.
it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for attending.
Pleasure
you.
is ours. Thank you very much.
Have a Merry Christmas, guys.
So have a...
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
All the best.
Okay, guys. Thanks a lot. Take care.
All right, you too.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, well, I think really, to be honest with you, we might as well kind of wrap up then. I mean,
Yeah.
we've done a good hour.
Yeah, it's been fun.
yeah,
We covered a
It
lot.
has been, yeah, it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun. It's always fun whenever the podcasts just go like that, whenever you can't see the time going in, whenever it's a case of, plodding along and you're like, can somebody talk? And you're just like, listen to everyone's points and going, yeah, that's good. So I've thoroughly enjoyed myself.
Thank you very much, Chris. I mean, it's a pleasure to have you on board, mate. I mean, when we sent out that call for listeners, and you were the only one on that emailing list that actually replied to us. So it's always so hard to get that feedback on a podcast.
It is. Sometimes you find that maybe it's just this time of year that people aren't too keen, but I'm always happy to talk about Star Wars. Sundays around 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock are always great for me because I'm never at work. So, it was just nice to come on here and meet some other guys. And I've subscribed to your podcast as well, the 12 Parsecs one. Sorry,
Oh,
I've
thank you.
completely forgotten about it, but whenever I heard
Less
it,
than 12 parsecs.
less than
Yes.
12
Wow,
parsecs.
that's a huge reduction.
Sorry. Exactly, yes. It's a Christmas sale, I think. But just whenever I heard that on the last episode, I was like, right, I'll need to listen to that. So I really enjoyed that. So it's always nice to find new people to talk to about Star Wars and listen to new podcasts and then contribute to them via email or whatever.
It's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Where can anyone find you online should they wish to look you up?
The likes of Vinto316 on Twitter or Instagram. I am on YouTube, just Vintomania. As the guy said earlier on, I was at Star Wars Celebration, so you'll see my experiences meeting the likes of Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and just the likes of the Rogue One gallery, which kind of makes me look back now and go like, it was so nice to be part of that. But yeah, you can just find me there. Thank you guys very much for having me on. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to do it again sometime soon. So thank you both very much for having me on.
Thanks very much,
Definitely.
Chris.
I mean, we should do this again at some point. Yeah, we'll have another discussion and we'll get it more into the podcast. It's
Cool.
great to have you, Chris. Our pleasure, mate. So, Timothy, if somebody wants to find you online, where can they look, mate?
Please go to the website, 12parsekspodcast.com. You'll find all my links to social media there. Less Than 12 Parsecs is the name of the show. You can search for it on iTunes and Stitcher. And I'm on Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff, but I'm not that strong in social media, so I made the mistake of not having the same name on all the different social media accounts. So that's why I send people to the website, 12parsekspodcast.com. You'll find all the links to Twitter, Facebook, and everywhere else I am.
That's the main hub for people to find you.
Yeah. That's
Brilliant.
the place to go.
Thank you very much for attending. It's been our pleasure to have you.
This has been great. This has been so much fun, and please look me up in the future. I hope to come back.
We will do. I mean, there'll be times, I guess, when we would be looking for other panelists and stuff. I mean, we've all got episode 8 coming up.
Oh,
It's going to be
can't wait.
great to do something like this all over again.
All right, let's talk to you then.
Okay,
Take care.
Merry
Thanks,
Christmas,
Tim.
mate.
Merry
Thank you.
Christmas.
You too. You're welcome. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Okay, cheers. Take it steady.
See ya.
Okay.
Is Chris still here?
I didn't know if I had to go, or
This is when we
I
did
didn't
the
know
whiskey
if I had to
update.
go or what.
No.
I just wanted to say, because I normally stay on the line anyway, just to thank the guy. So sincerely, just thanks for having me on. As I say, I did have great fun. I'm not BSing you or anything, but it was great just to come on, and it's nice to meet newer people, like yourselves, and just thanks for keeping us in the loop about it. And it's been a lot of fun. So just the pair of you have a good Christmas, and I wish you all the best of luck in the future with the podcast. And if you ever need anyone else to jump on, give me a shout, and if I'm available, I'll hop on.
Thanks, Chris.
Well, cheers, Chris. I mean, we do appreciate that, mate, a lot. So, yeah, I mean, well, have a decent Christmas yourself, mate, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, same to yourselves, and I shall let you guys go on. But once again, thanks very much, and I shall talk to you again in the future.
All right, cheers. Take care.
Okay, cheers. all the
Cheers,
best.
Chris. Bye.
Bye-bye. There you go. That was our little international roundtable when we sat and discussed Rogue One. Again, I'd like to thank Chris Vint from Vintomania, Timothy McMahon from Less Than 12 Parsecs podcast, and Nelson Negron and Chris Marks from the excellent podcast FN 2187 Star Wars podcast. A great bunch of guys, and I'm certain we're hoping that we can do future stuff with them, cross over again, because the discussion was a lot of fun and it was great to have that conversation. We would urge you to check out all of those guys' channels, and we will put the relevant links into the metadata for this podcast to make it easy for you to do so. Go on, give Chris a like on YouTube, give the other guys a review on iTunes. Cost you nothing but a few seconds of your time, and whilst you're there, give us a review as well. So, that was our little roundtable discussion. Let's have a look at Rogue One in summary. My feelings, I was a little uneasy going into it. By the time I came out of it, yes. I feel like they nailed it. That they made an instant classic amongst classics. And I loved the way it gave the nods to us more grown-up fans with all the little Easter eggs that are in the movie. I'm sure a lot of the mainstream didn't pick up on them, but a lot of us Star Wars fans, well, we had a great time spotting all the little things that they'd put in there for us. From the looks of it, from the mainstream, it's been received well. Certainly looking at people's status messages on things like Facebook and Twitter, the message concerning Rogue One seems to be overwhelmingly positive. Although one thing I have noticed with people's statements is, please, spelling matters. I believe that Rouge One is a form of ladies' lipstick. Okay? Think of it the way I do. Rog you, and you won't go wrong. It was a great film, and it's been great to do this little special on it. I know it's interesting to think and to find out what other people out there think about Rogue One. Of course, you know, we hang out on all the Star Wars podcast social media pages and hangouts where this kind of stuff is discussed the whole time. So we've always kind of got that hardcore fans viewing that we can call up. But it would be interesting to hear what you, the general Hot Wampa listener, has to say about Rogue One. I know that several of you have seen it several times. Why not get back to us? We could do a further feedback show on Rogue One where me and Mark can go through what people's comments are, and we'd love to do so. As for Hot Wampa, where is it now in 2016? We were considering recording a Christmas special. We're not too sure about that. Last year's Christmas special still remains one of our most highest downloaded shows for some reason. I'm not too sure why. To be honest, this one's taken a bit longer to produce than we had hoped, and I am working through till Christmas practically myself, so we're not sure we're going to have the time to put out a Christmas special. Whether me and Mark convene after Christmas, perhaps do a end of year roundup or something like that, special show instead, who knows, it depends on how we're all doing for time, I guess. But in case we're not back to you again this side of Christmas, I'd like to wish all of our listeners and contributors and everyone who's been a part of Hot Wampa since last Christmas, Merry Christmas, have a safe one, enjoy your Christmas, don't drink and drive, be sensible, and have a happy new year. And if we don't get back to you before Christmas with a Christmas special, like I said, it's still a bit up in the air, but I think it's probably going to be unlikely. Thank you for staying with us for another year. Time flies doing a podcast, although you always seem to be constantly busy on it. So I hope that Santa brings you plenty of Star Wars and whatever your franchise themed goodies. I'm certainly hoping on a few, I know that much. Been dropping a few hints. You got to, ain't you? So take care. If we don't see you before, we'll talk to you again in 2017, and that's it. This is Hot Wampa signing out. Take care.
Are you ready?
All the way.
Then let's go.
All right. I thought I told you to stay on the ship.
You did, but I thought it was boring and you were in trouble. You're right. I should just wait on the ship.
Rogue One, rated PG-13.